Good day, and let me share with you something interesting. Numbers 15, 38, 39. Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue, and it shall be to them for a fringe, that they may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you are going a-whoring. The fringes in the Hebrew is the word tzitzit. And tzitzits are these little tassels that you see Jews wearing in their prayer shawl, the talit. They've got these little tassels. And it's instructed there be a blue ribbon or a blue thread in each one of these tassels. Okay, I won't go into all the idea of the blue tassels or blue threads and everything, because if you want to learn about that, join our All Access channel, learning channel, and we discuss that in there, as well as many other things. What I do find important about this, though, is something for all of us believers. God commanded that they put these tassels on the four corners of their garments. It's interesting when this command came. It didn't come during Mount Sinai. It came after the spies had returned with their bad report. Moses, well, actually, if you look at this in the Hebrew, you find something very interesting. Now, it says in Numbers 15:2 or 13:2, send out men that they may spy out the lands. Shalach. That's the name of the Torah portion that we had studied this morning. I studied it with I have a Saturday morning Torah study portion class that we have with our learning channel, All Access channel. And the Torah portion that we had this morning was on Shalach, which means to send out. There's a word, it says send out. Well, all our English translations, with a few exceptions, the NASB, the American Standard Bible, a couple others, will include this second word found in the Hebrew. All the other translations, they ignore the word. They simply say, send out men to spy out the lands. But in the Hebrew, you got the word lakah. Send for yourselves. Lakah is a preposition and pronoun. Send for yourself. Spies. Now, our English translators overlook that. They overlook it simply because it doesn't make much sense. Send for yourself. God's commanding them to do this. Not necessarily. In fact, if you read in the Talmud, it teaches you that God is bringing the people of Israel to a new level. Up to this point, the people of Israel, they had been slaves. As slaves, they did everything according to their masters. And they became, if you ever saw the movie Shawshank Redemption, and it talks about prisoners in a prison, and one of the main characters in the prison is telling a new prisoner that one of the big dangers is becoming institutionalized. You get used to being told what to do. You're told when to get up. You're told when to eat, what to eat, when to go back to your cell, when to exercise, when not to exercise, when to go to lunch, and when to go to bed, when to shower. You're told when to do everything. You're told to do everything. Everything's provided. You don't have to work for your food. You don't have to. You automatically get your food. Everything comes to you. You become institutionalized. Now, significant about that was there was one old prisoner who'd been in prison many, many years in this story, and he got a pardon. He finally got freedom. The only thing is he couldn't handle the freedom. He couldn't handle having to make decisions on his own. And so he tried to work a job. He worked a little minimum wage job, and that, he couldn't adjust to that. Eventually, he ended up hanging himself because he couldn't adjust to freedom. And that's what had happened to the children of Israel. They were told, they were given their food, they were told when to go to work. They were institutionalized by the Egyptians. They were slaves. And they really liked the idea that they're free. They were set free as slaves. And they entered in, started on their way to the promised land, but eventually this freedom wasn't all it was cracked up to be. It required some responsibility on their part. And yet God provided all their food. God provided for direction. God took care of them. And anything they had to do, they'd always run to Moses, and Moses run to God and find out, God, what should we do? And God would tell them what to do. Well, now they're about to enter the promised land. And God is bringing them to another level. Now he's giving them a choice. They wanted to scout out the land. And so Moses went to God and says, oh, God, they want to scout the land. Should we or should we? And God says, send for yourself. The sages translate this as, you decide for yourself. You decide whether to send out spies or not. I'm not going to command you to do it. I'm not going to, you've got to learn to start doing things for yourself here. That's a very important lesson for us believers. Somehow we get so wrapped up in just being told by our preachers what to do. We won't make a move until, we consult God, but God's expecting us to grow up a little. There's some Christians I know who pray over everything they wear in the morning, pray where they're going to park, pray what they're going to have for lunch. God is saying, grow up. I'm taking you to a new level. And Moses realized that they were moving to another level here. And Moses also knew something going on. He knew there was dissension in the camp. Because when the spies came back, sure, they said there were giants and, they'd bop us over the head, lop our heads off, and they're more powerful than we are. This is a wonderful land and everything, but, there's no way we're going to conquer it. Well, they mentioned one other thing. The inhabitants of the land are consumed by the land. The land consumes them. The word is akal, which means to eat. The land eats them up. In other words, they got to work for their food. They don't get manna like we do. They got to plant. They have to till the ground, find the seeds, plant the seeds, water the ground, weed it, take care of it, cultivate it, then harvest it. And then they take the wheat and they got to grind it, pound it, and make it into dough and bake it and bake bread. They got to work. We don't have to do that, man. We got manna. It comes every morning. They're consumed by the land. They got to thinking about it. And they got to thinking, something's not right here about this. This freedom stuff isn't all it's cracked up to be. It's going to require some work. It's going to require making decisions on our own. I don't know if we really want that or not. Especially the leaders. My gosh, this is going to require, it's not going to, we can always run to Moses and Moses can run to God, but now we got to make decisions. We're going to have responsibility. I don't know if we want that. And there was a little undercurrent, a deep state building, plots, conspiracies to overthrow Moses and set their own government up and go back to Egypt, where at least they didn't, they knew what they were doing. They made bricks. That they knew how to do. But farming, they didn't know the first thing about farming. And fighting battles in a war to conquer the land, they didn't know the first thing about fighting war. Sure, they fought the Amalekites and, fought off a few enemies, but, this is conquering a whole land. They weren't defending themselves. They're going in as conquerors, and that was a little scary. And them themselves as the leaders, they were going to lead this attack. They weren't too thrilled with that idea. So there's a little conspiracy going on. In fact, Moses changed the name of Hosea to Joshua. He put a Yod in front of Joshua's name, and that Yod in front of the name Hosea changed it from a perfect tense where he's saved or he is saved to he will be saved with that Yod. In other words, he gave a blessing to Joshua. Joshua is Moses' right-hand man. Moses was Joshua's mentor. Moses trusted Joshua, and he knew Joshua wasn't going to come back with a false report. So he blessed Joshua before they went, but when he sent out the rest, Moses had a real red flag about this thing. This is in the hands and responsibility of these men who I sense are really plotting against me. I don't think it's going to turn out very good, and it didn't. They came back and said, man, there's giants out there. They're going to lop our heads off. We got to get out of here. Scared the daylights out of the people. And they decided not to go. Well, something happened. God said, you're not going back to Egypt, nor are you going in the promised land. You're just going to have to wander the wilderness for 40 years because the next generation, a generation hasn't been institutionalized, a generation that's learning to think for themselves, a generation that learns how to make decisions, and a generation that has enough faith to believe that they can enter the land and conquer it. They will be allowed to go in. Well, here's the point of the story. A lot of people got the idea, we were by Mount Sinai, we got all these laws. But you know what? If we're not going in the land, we don't need to follow these laws. That's what all the laws are for, was to follow the land. Was when we're in a promised land. But since we're not going, God, we don't need to follow your laws. And there was one old boy who really took that to heart, and he started collecting sticks. That's in Numbers 15:44. And he started doing some work on the Sabbath. They confronted him and said, wait a minute, you're breaking the Sabbath. He says, well, why not? We're not going to the promised land. What good are your laws if we're not going to the promised land? But that wasn't the point. And the old boy ended up with a capital punishment on his head. People realized, I guess we're stuck following the law. It was right after this incident that God gave the command of the tzitzit. The command of the tzitzit. In other words, you're to put these tassels around four corners of your garment, and they are to be looked upon. In fact, it says that you may look upon it. Well, in Hebrew, there is no male or female gender. Or there's no neuter gender. There's only female and male. So everything's either a female or everything's a male. They don't have a neuter clause. In English, we have a neuter clause. So our translators figured he's talking about a tassel, which is a dead thing. It's either male or female. We'll just call it it. Forget the fact that it's in a masculine form. If it was in a feminine form, we still call it an it. The Jewish sages, however, in the Talmud, they take a different approach to that. And in the Talmud, in Barakat 1a, they say that the words Ra'atin Oto should really be rendered not look upon it, but look upon him. Follow with the masculine gender as is indicated in the Hebrew. In other words, when they look upon this tassel, they're looking upon God. And they're reminded of God. And they're reminded that whatever they do as unto God. And that they are always in his presence. This is followed in the Talmud in Manikat 43a, that a story about a rather rich man who had heard about, he was a very devout Jew, and he wore to tzitzit and took it very seriously. But he was kind of a wanderer away from God, and he heard about a beautiful harlot in another town she was so beautiful, she charged 400 pieces, 400 coins, gold coins, for her services. Well, this old boy got all excited. He forgot all about the laws of adultery and all that other thing. And he immediately sent a messenger out with the 400 gold coins to set up an appointment with this harlot, to take advantage of her services. Day came, he appeared at the harlot's home, and the servant brought him into a room, and there was the harlot sitting on top of a bed. And there was like a few stairs he had to climb to get up to the top of the bed. And so he started to climb the stairs. After taking 2 steps, however, he slipped. And when he did, his tzitzit flew across his face. And instantly walked down the stairs again, announced to the harlot that he was leaving. The harlot immediately called out, "Why? Don't leave until you tell me what blemish you found on me." And he says, "Believe me, it's not you. You're the most beautiful woman I ever saw. But I follow the tzitzit, and I wear the tzitzit. And it reminds me that I'm always in the presence of God, and whatever I do as unto God. And this is not God's will." Because it says at the end of this verse, that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you go a-whoring. And he said, "My eyes, my heart desires you, but God commanded me not to go a-whoring." And he left. And this, according to the story, so impressed the harlot that she, became a prostitute, turned her heart to God, and gave all her ill-gotten wealth to the poor. But that's the point of the tzitzit. Now, it is a command, and I believe the command applies to us as well. Not that we should wear a tzitzit. That's a Jewish thing, and I don't believe I should identify myself as a Jew, since I'm not Jewish. So I'm not going to wear the prayer shawl with the tent fringes or the tassels. I'm not going to wear a yarmulke and the other things they do to remind themselves that they are always in the presence of God. Whatever they do as unto God. But I like that idea, because I think God commanded us to do some things, something physical to remind ourselves of God's presence. And so what I do is I wear a hat. Wherever I go, even when I go to church, unless they have specific rules that I shouldn't wear a hat in church, and I won't do it. But otherwise, I'll wear a hat to remind myself that I'm always in the presence of God. And whatever I do as unto God. You don't have to wear a hat. You can carry a Bible. You can carry a little New Testament. You can carry a little aluminum cross in your pocket, or wear one around your neck. Anything. It's not a talisman. It's not something that has magical powers that bring you good fortune. It's simply a reminder that whatever you do, remember you are in the presence of God. And whatever you do as unto God.